Good morning on this Wednesday morning. As we continue our series on Can You Relate, we come to Mephibosheth. Now, Mephibosheth is the son of Jonathan, David's best friend. And when David becomes king, we hear in 2 Samuel chapter 9 that David is searching if there's any survivors from Jonathan's household or even from the whole family of Saul. David wants to do something to bless them, something to honor and help them. And he finds out that Mephibosheth, David's crippled son, is alive. And so David brings him to the palace, and you hear a wonderful exchange in 2 Samuel chapter 9. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Mephibosheth." "At your service," he replied. "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore you to all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." And a few verses later it ends with this: "So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons." Isn't that grace? Isn't that a way of honoring the friendship that David had with Jonathan by taking care of his crippled son? But it's interesting as the story progresses, when you get to 2 Samuel chapter 16, this is after David's son Absalom has usurped the throne and has created an insurrection, and David is now being hunted and he's on the run. And David finds the servant of Mephibosheth, the one who was in charge of all of Saul's household. And he asks, "Where is Mephibosheth? Why didn't he come with you?" And this is the answer. The king said, "Where is your master's grandson?" Ziba said to him, "He is staying in Jerusalem because he thinks, 'Today the Israelites will restore me to my grandfather's kingdom.'" Then the king said to Ziba, "All that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours." You get the sense here that David feels like Mephibosheth has betrayed him. Mephibosheth chose to stay in Jerusalem and show loyalty to Absalom rather than loyalty to David, who had shown him kindness. But the story doesn't end there. If you go a few chapters further, after Absalom's death, in 2 Samuel 19, David approaches, he returns to Jerusalem, and he finds Mephibosheth. And he says, "Why didn't you go with me?" Beginning in verse 26. He said, "My lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled, and I will ride on it, so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me. He has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants deserve nothing but death from my lord the king, but you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king?" So here we get to sit thousands of years later and be the judge over Mephibosheth. Who do we believe? Do we believe the account of Ziba, the King Saul's main servant, that Mephibosheth had decided that he would remain in Jerusalem kind of as an opportunist, seeking to be restored to his father's kingdom through Absalom? Or do we believe the words of Mephibosheth, that Ziba lied about him and that the whole time that he wanted to go, but Ziba convinced him to stay in Jerusalem? Thing is, we'll never really know what was in Mephibosheth's heart. Sometimes people lie and make excuses. Sometimes they are opportunistic and they see opportunities for advancement, and they'll cheat or lie or betray or switch loyalties depending on what they think will work out best for themselves. Sometimes those same decisions can be made out of fear because we're afraid of which is going to be worse for us as it comes out. We don't know what was in Mephibosheth's heart, but I think when we listen to his story, we need to ask ourselves the same question. Why do we do the things that we do? Are we opportunistic and seeking to do whatever it takes to create opportunities for ourselves? Are we motivated by fear and we allow fear to be the excuse for betraying the relationships that we have in our life? Now, the cool thing about this story to me is not so much Mephibosheth, but it's David. Because David's heart is steadfast. He's made it a resolve. He will do no harm to Mephibosheth. He will do that for the sake of Mephibosheth himself. He'll do it for the sake of his friendship with Mephibosheth's father, Jonathan. He will be faithful to him. So even after Mephibosheth says this very flowery apology and this very flowery greeting that I deserve nothing from you, well, David says, you know what? I'm giving you back your lands. I'm going to tell Ziba, because I don't know which is right, but I'm going to give him half of the lands, and I'm going to tell him to give you the other half. The thing is, when you look at Mephibosheth and when you look at that question, can you relate? I guess, one is to guard yourself from the dangers that Mephibosheth faced. As a crippled man there were many things he could not do for himself. He had to rely on his own cunning rather than on faith in the Lord and confidence in the people who had been good to him. And at least that was the temptation. But I'd like to think, can you relate to David when you've resolved to do good? So many times it doesn't matter what the intention of the hearts of the people that we're trying to be good for. The fact is, we spend a lot of time trying to weigh, is this person worthy of kindness? Is this person worthy of my generosity? If we follow David, you don't worry about that. You give because you can give. You're generous not because they deserve it, but because it's the right thing to do. And we care and we give and we share, not because necessarily we know with absolute certainty that everybody we do that for is worthy of it, but we know that when somebody's hungry, they need food, even if they haven't made the best choices in life. We know that if there are needs in their life, out of love, we are motivated to help them, regardless of whether we think they measure up to that or not. So a lot to think about when we think about Mephibosheth, and some of it's what we learned from him, and some of it's what we learned from David. So God bless you as you pray and reflect. Amen.